Let's get started domestically, because I thought this was this is pretty big news. Fox News reports DC prepares for possible U.S. Freedom Convoy. Officials request National Guard troops. Tow trucks spotted near Washington, D.C.'s National Mall. Now, I found this interesting because when I was reading all of this news, all of these news outlets are saying request for National Guard. And then Fox News seems to bury the lead, outright saying National Guard troops will reportedly deploy beginning Tuesday and remain in place until the end of March. Fox News is saying they have a source telling them this, that the truckers are requesting a permit for 1,000 to 3,000 people to gather in the Capitol, and the National Guard will reportedly be deploying Tuesday and remain in place until the end of March. So I don't know exactly what we're going to see right now. Tow trucks are apparently on scene in DC already, and they're saying they've been contracted by the city for like 10 days or so. And I believe the U.S. Freedom Convoys, they're set to leave in a couple days from Barstow, California. It's Barstow, right? Is that where they're coming from?
We're getting a lot of conflicting reports. I was talking with our field reporter about that today, and like we're comparing notes, and it's really hard to figure out exactly what's going on right now.
But they're expecting to be in D.C., March 1st?
Yes.
State of the Union address?
For the State of the Union, yeah, that's the plan.
That's a bold time to come in. So they're already putting up security perimeter fencing. I think it's going to look very, very different to what we saw in Canada. But I suppose, the truckers are going to be prepared for that. And I'm wondering how things are going to go. I mean, the mandates out here in the States, I mean, they're going away. It's not the same as it is in Canada. In Canada, it's absolutely brutal. They're beating people. They're laughing about it. Trampled some old woman, on a mobility scooter, and then the cops were posting messages laughing about it. Messages got leaked. What do you guys think is going to happen? You think the U.S. is going to get rowdy?
Yeah, well, I think they're smart to get the permit, first of all, right? So you don't have a repeat. You don't put yourself in the same situation what happened in Canada. And then, but how... That doesn't mean that everybody involved in the convoy are going to act the same way.
Yep.
So along the way, I wouldn't be surprised if they stopped somewhere and clogged something ahead of getting to the permit site, right? If you're looking to make a statement. And so it'll be interesting to see how that plays
Or like
out.
an FBI agent steps up on the back of the truck and throws a brick and is like, hey, the truckers are throwing bricks. I do not. This is just red flags, red light flashing warning. Be careful. Do not. They're ready for you. Right. The fascist organization that is controlling the United States and Canada and all of the Western democracies, this liberal economic order, is ready for you. They're planning for this. They're already got the National Guard prepared. They're going to call people domestic terrorists. They're going to put people in solitary. Be prepared.
Ian, you just cranked it all the way up to 11.
Yeah.
Man, like a slow. First, the international cabal that's controlling the Western.
Yes.
Well, I think it's fair to say that Biden called Trudeau. They had a conversation about what's happening with the convoy. Biden urged Trudeau to crack down with federal authority. Trudeau then started using these insane emergency powers to freeze bank accounts. So I would maybe turn it to 10, just go down one notch. I don't know if if it's a cabal like Biden and Trudeau, go and then hang out at a secret meeting underground or anything like that. I certainly think these world leaders have trade agreements, have economic ties. And whether or not you can say there's one unified organization, like as if Biden and Trudeau literally work for the World Economic Forum, I don't know about all that. I know that they're interested in supporting. I know that they're negotiating with. I know they attend these similar events. So just one notch down. But I'm not in complete disagreement.
Yeah, the Bank of International Settlements loans money to the Bank of England and the Federal Reserve of New York, which is where I don't know if Canada gets their money through England. I don't know where does Canada print its money from? Its central bank.
Everyone's just responding 20.
Yeah,
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah.
It's so true. When you're up against a machine gun nest, we talked about this yesterday, you do not charge straight at it.
Right.
That's what these people have done. They charged the position with the Canadian ones. The defenders were like unprepared, and they're like, and then they set up a machine gun nest to protect the area. Yeah. Now, if you're going to go at it, you got to find new methodologies, man. It is so dangerous to repeat this action.
Yeah, and the other important thing, too, is with the Freedom Convoy in Canada, they really underestimated it. They had no idea. They tried smearing it. They tried calling them violent. None of it works. None of it sticks. So then they just say, okay, we're going full fash. They just go full fascist. They freeze bank accounts. They even get socialists like Vosh posting on Twitter like, whoa, this has gone too far. Mm-hmm. They even get, more establishment types like Stephen Marsh was on the show saying like, that's martial law. So they went over the top. I'd be willing to bet they've learned from those mistakes. In the United States, very, very different from Canada. The police are going to be way more brutal. Tear gas will be deployed. They're going to be embedded, I guarantee it, in the trucker convoy the moment they leave, following them every step of the way. And I think they're going to do everything in their power to disrupt it, but also they're going to be spying on everything the truckers say or do.
They need more enemies. The January 6th thing's becoming old news, and those people have been off the radar. Dude, oh God. When you have a huge military, you're constantly looking for a place to use it because it's costing you money if you're not.
Well, look, we all hear about what's going on in Ukraine and with Russia. And it's remarkable that that's Biden's priority. I know it's probably a cliche at this point to bring it up. It's become a trope. The southern border is wide open, just completely obliterated. People are pouring through, and the U.S. government doesn't care. And so when I see that, my view is it's very obvious the Biden administration has no allegiance to this country. I just don't believe it. I really, really don't. Sending troops to Ukraine? Why? To help Ukraine? To help NATO? To help Europe?
Well,
what about us?
We don't have troops in Ukraine.
No, we have them in Belarus or...
we have them in Poland. So the 18th Airborne and
82nd, is it?
And the 82nd are there.
Yeah.
Now, we do have, from what I've read, we have troops, those who are doing training, which generally in the past, that's always been Green Berets. When they're put into that position, that's who generally do the training, and they're trying to help the Ukrainian forces. But that's all the way close to the border with Ukraine. So we have no troops in danger. They're in Ukraine.
I just mean, why is it such a heavy priority for the U.S. to be involved in training in Poland and doing these things when we're not even taking care of ourselves?
Well, it's really kind of a two-sided coin. I agree, right, that something needs to be done with the border. But that is the plan. The plan is to keep it open, right? That is the policy.
I guess so.
And so obviously there isn't any other way to stop it other than the states along the border trying to build their own walls, trying to enforce, what is the actual law along the border themselves. So I get the analogy, but the danger of what's going on in Ukraine right now is one, it is immediate. I'm not talking about World War III. This has been a carefully orchestrated plan on the part of Putin, and it's not going to stop. Even if all he does is what he's done now, he's won.
Yep.
So,
he won with Crimea.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And then all he has to do is take a break and redo it again.
And I tweeted Putin was afraid of Trump, and I believe it, but I got response. I got a funny response. It was Jermaine Clement from Flight of the Conchords responded to me, and he said something like, "Sure he was," and it was a picture of like Putin standing next to Trump or something, and I'm like, I don't know what that picture is supposed to be. I genuinely believe, like, dude, Putin can walk up to Trump and take a picture with him and smile and laugh. Putin wasn't afraid that Donald Trump would physically harm him. Putin's KGB training, what does he do, jiu-jitsu or whatever?
Yeah.
I don't think he's afraid of Trump on a physical man-to-man level, like he's going to walk up to him and go, oh, no, it's Trump. He's afraid that Trump is insane and that if he did something, Trump would act irrationally and do something irrational. That would make it very difficult for him to do exactly what he's doing.
Right, but honestly, whoever is in office, and I agree with what you're saying to a certain degree, no one was going to stop him. Okay? I don't care who was in office, because we're not going to put troops in Ukraine because they are not a member of NATO.
Yep.
So both sides of the fence have agreed, right? There's already resolutions already saying boots on the ground, no. Support, that's going to happen. But so I do agree with what you're saying, but we're dealing with a different creature in Vladimir Putin.
But so we saw the escalation of this under Obama, and then under Trump, it kind of just fizzles. It kind of just goes into stasis. Biden gets in, and all of a sudden it ignites again. No,
and true, but that is also part of the cycle, and this is kind of what he waits for, right? Opportunity.
Yeah.
So when you have your opportunity, you strike. So as we talk about more civil unrest and civil disobedience here in the United States, listen, China and Russia, who are becoming closer and closer together, we have the military capability to stop either one, not both.
Well, I guess the fear is that if the U.S. becomes distracted, China moves in on Taiwan, or there have been some experts who have argued that China will adopt the Russia strategy on Taiwan and use pressure, control, manipulation, propaganda, and just slowly eat away at it until they can take Taiwan.
I feel like a lot of Americans are still in the mindset of the B-52, the age of the war of the B-52 bomber. Like we're not the dominant force anymore. There's lasers that can blow up everything from everywhere. Anyone thinks that we got the biggest balls on the planet are living in 1970. So you actually saw Trump one time was like, we have the best generals. We can win any. And you see the generals like, shut up, dude. Stop. Don't make us like, don't put us out there as like this military.
But do we really have the best generals?
No. We don't. We don't, and we don't have the
No.
best military either. All these militaries are equally destructive at this point.
Well,
At least the Chinese, Russian, and American militaries. If any one
for
of those
the
wants to
11
wipe the planet clean, they could do it.
for the 11 aircraft carriers currently floating around the world, we own all of them but one.
Except how many nuclear submarines are there that we don't see? To think that we're the best because it looks like we're the best is really
That's a good
disconcerting.
point.
I'm a little biased because I served.
Oh, yeah.
I think we are the best. I not only, and the reason why I think we are the best now is because when I was in, having a patch on your left shoulder was very rare. It came from Vietnam. Now, if you don't have one, it's an oddity. We are battle hardened and tested. These are not just high school kids just going in and going through just training, but actually going through the rigors of war.
And I think it's a good point, Ian. We don't know. You know, we can only make assumptions about the capabilities of these other countries because they're not going to tell us. But the same could be said for the United States. So for now, if what we know is we don't know what China secretly got because it's a secret, we don't know what Russia secretly has because it's a secret, we don't know what the U.S. has because it's a secret as well. But the U.S. on top of that has 11 aircraft carriers out there, and doesn't the U.S. have like 20 or something like that?
Well, so the largest
They have
air
10 out
force
there.
in the world is United States Air Force, and then the second largest is United States Navy.
Yep.
Yeah,
Air power.
that's right.
And I'll just make one more point. Sorry.
No.
We can see with satellites when other countries are building weapons because we can see shipping lanes. We can see the movement of resources. I can't remember who was talking to us about this. They were saying like, we would know if these other countries were building warships or advanced technology because of the massive amount of manpower and resources to move all this stuff. When it came to the Manhattan Project, we didn't have we didn't have spy satellites or anything like that.
Right.
So when blasts were going off, sensors were picking things up, but the Russians, they couldn't, I'm sorry, this was during World War II, like Axis powers were just like, what's happening? Throughout the Cold War with all the nuclear testing, it was espionage. You had to like physically go. Now we got satellites up there just watching everybody. They can read your license plates. So we can see everything. Plus we have AI tracking all this stuff, and it'll be like, we've noticed a large deposit of iron being shipped underground for some reason. And then the U.S. is going to be like, we know something's being built there.
Well, and the key is not simply to have the best or the well-trained, but you have to have them in position to win. Right. This is why we don't want to. I mean, I thought Larry Sharp was, that was awesome yesterday. Great ideas. But to get out of NATO, that would be a mistake. You have to have the force in position, or it's basically not going to be able to react.
I think ground forces, and now we're in the age of intercontinental ballistic missiles and rods from God, tungsten rods dropping from orbit. Like position, we're all in position now to get destroyed.
Yeah, but that hasn't changed. I mean,
like
it's been that way for a long time.
Like literally since when, like late,
not to
late
mention-
90s or something.
But we're fighting warfare with sanctions right now. So Biden's like, I'm going to sanction these rich guys because they want to put pressure on these ultra wealthy individuals who are like, hey man, I like flying on planes and eating, steaks in New York City. Don't sanction me. And then they're hoping that influence will trickle down and cause some change.
I think if the U.S. got embroiled, it'd be like the power grid gets blown up, and then they cut off all their oil from Europe and Asia, and then America's done for. Like if the power goes, I don't know, it feels like so vulnerable. Everyone acts so tough, and like we do have great troops, and we used to have the best technology, but now.
Well, don't get me wrong. I'm certainly not advocating for any of it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to defend my brothers in arms also.
Let me ask you guys. If the president came out and said, we need to build wind farms, solar power, so that we can be energy, so we can have sufficient energy in the event of war, do you think people would be like, oh, that sounds good to me? Or do you think they'd be like, no war, don't do it?
Raytheon would be like, that's a great idea. Let's start building solar panels.
But isn't that the appropriate, you've got the climate change left,
Right.
and you've got the energy independent loving right. Couldn't they just be like, we're going to be energy independent so that no one can screw with us? Hey, the climate change left wins on this one. The right, we see the market energy independence. We win on this one. Where it seems like unity there.
No, and there should be, because that's the grid. Our electrical grid is one of the most insecure part of our infrastructure. We have a investor of ours in Fortitude Ranch. His name is David Tyson. He's putting out a documentary on this, and it's really excellent. I was able to get a sneak peek, and it's griddowndoc.com. You could actually go and see the trailer, and he's going to be putting this out. Phenomenal job. He actually has a booth at the upcoming CPAC this Saturday, and so he's looking to launch that. And it was so well done to show exactly how vulnerable we are. We have to. I just heard it too. A couple news outlets picked it up, not about his documentary, but about this fact, because of the possibility this thing gets out of hand. That's our weakest point. And when that happens, I'm sorry, that's going to bring in the most serious crisis of our time and the possible collapse.
And it'll be a cyber attack.
And it will start with cyber.
Yeah, we talked about, before the show, we were talking about this, and I mentioned driving down the street, and I saw a big power plant just there. And I was like, that's the most vulnerable.
Absolutely.
And then you would mention, well, Dad, but that's not even the cyber aspect of it. That's just the physical blunt trauma you could inflict on the power grid locally.
And think about sleeper cells, right? So if somebody's really looking to destabilize us and things get out of hand there, that is going to be targeted.
It surprises me that it hasn't happened yet. Do you think that that's because they're planning a big one?
Well, you got to hold your horses. I was about to say something.
Oh.
That's you're going to enjoy.
Thanks, Tim.
There was this moment during the Trump presidency where Trump ordered an airstrike on Iranian targets. Abruptly, Donald Trump ordered the airstrike off. Told him, turn around, come back home. And when asked why, he said, I asked how many people were down there. They said 500, and I said it didn't make sense to kill that many people in this strike, so we called it off. But one thing I noticed, and it could be totally unrelated, was that from the point where the airstrike was deployed, in that moment, I believe it was some kind of oil refinery in Philadelphia, exploded for some reason. Now, I asked a bunch of my cybersecurity and like white hat hacker buddies, and they said they didn't think in any way it was related. And I said, is that because you don't have evidence or because you think it's impossible? And they were like, well, I have no reason to believe it. Sometimes these accidents happen, but it's certainly possible. And so I again, there's no evidence to suggest this is the case, but is it possible that Trump ordered an airstrike and Iran said, blow up a reactor and blow up a refinery in Philadelphia? Did. Then they rushed to Trump and they said, they're holding our facilities hostage. You need to call this off before we get decimated from a cyber attack. One thing I can tell you is that industrial control systems in the U.S. are extremely vulnerable to cyber attacks because a lot of them were built in the 70s. They use this archaic and ancient operating systems. They're being updated, obviously, and security is a big issue. But man, some of the people that I've talked to who work in the security areas of this stuff have just been like, it's like a few lines of basic code can blow up this facility.
You're making me think of Stuxnet. This is from malicious computer. You've heard of this stuff. Yeah. Malicious computer worm first uncovered in 2010 and thought to have been developed since at least 2005. It targets supervisory control and data acquisition systems and is believed to be responsible for causing substantial damage to the nuclear program of Iran. Now, if we did that to Iran, I wouldn't be shocked if Iran did that back.
And I think it was the U.S. and Israel working together on the weapon.
Yes.
And then what it did was it caused the nuclear centrifuges to not stop. So then they eventually just overheated and blew up.
This is just one that we've uncovered. Stuxnet. There's probably tons of
I think it was because someone found Stuxnet infecting like home computers or something. I could be wrong about that.
Well, and so we got the information from the Israelis, the specifics, and that's why we knew exactly how the functioning inner workings were with the pumps and the different things that work the controlling mechanisms. And so we went to the heart.
I see. So we figured out how it worked, then we wrote code to disrupt how it worked.
It was specifically written to do that one thing.
It's crazy. And so my understanding is that people, their regular computers got infected with Stuxnet, but it didn't matter because it has zero effect on your home computer. it was just infecting everything until it found those specific, controls, those machines. And
For
then
5 years until
then
it was
blew 'em up.
uncovered.
And then it blew them up.
And that was like, wow. Okay, so
And it's not the only one. There's been a bunch of weapons that have been developed that have been, I think a couple, I can't remember the names.
And that's years ago, right?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, it was like 10 years ago.
so
wasn't it?
imagine what's there now.
Jeez.
What's out there?
I went to, there's a conventions. There's two of them, DEF CON and Black Hat, the hacker conventions in Las Vegas. This is 10 years ago, mind you. But I saw these hackers explain very easily how to blow up pump stations. They were like, you name it, oil, water, any kind of chemical. And they did a demonstration where they showed the industrial control system. They showed it operate, and then the guy said, "I'm now gonna enter our code and activate, press enter." And then all of a sudden, they put a pressure release valve. But what they did was they told the system to force pressure in the same direction, so that the pressure collides and builds up in one spot and causes a pipe to explode. They put a pressure release valve on it, so then it sprays across the room, and they catch it in a pitcher, and water sprays everywhere.
Whoa.
They were like, imagine if we didn't have that release valve for the purpose of the demonstration, the pipe would overpressurize and blow up. Another thing they showed us was that they said for nuclear reactor cooling systems, the computer needs to know the temperature of the water. They said only a few lines of code, and we change the temperature to say it's colder than it is, overheats and explodes. That's it, or melts down, disrupts the system.
if we're wargaming this, a worst case scenario or bad case scenario, there's conflict. Someone wants to invade the country, and then they blow out the grid, the electric grid, with a virus. I don't know, would it take out the entire grid? Is there like a backup plan? And I don't even know if you're the guy that knows the answers to this, Steve, but I'm asking you.
Well, it's broken down into segments, right? So there's 4 basic hubs of where this work and how it would affect it. All are not so intertwined that you could take it all at once. But then you have the whole spectrum of an EMP, right? If we ever get to that day, which would just completely fry multiples. Because if you'd have to do it at airburst, you wouldn't want it to hit the ground because that wouldn't have the same effect. But doing
Right.
it as an airburst, then there would really be a problem.
I think solar
Yeah.
flares can cause that too.
Yeah, to a degree. We haven't seen them, the magnitude of them would have to be much more than what we normally see.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to watch live, you can check out this channel Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Now, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you want more unfiltered and uncensored content with all of these guests, go to timcast.com and become a member. All of these guests you know and love in exclusive segments on our website where we are unrestricted in what we talk about, so you'll definitely not want to miss it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.